Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel Dentistry to the Point. This is Dr. Drumil Manik, and today we are going to start with a new topic, that is viral diseases of the oral cavity. So the very first topic with which we are going to dealing with will be herpes simplex, right? It is very important topic, will be asked short note or even long answers are asked on this topic. So starting with herpes simplex, it is an acute infectious disease. What does it mean? Acute. That means it is going to progress very fast. And infectious disease, most common viral disease affecting man with exception of viral respiratory infection. That means it is not having clinical features or signs of viral respiratory infections, but again it is a most common viral disease affecting man. So it is mainly caused by herpes simplex virus. So herpes simplex virus again is a DNA double-stranded DNA virus which is having a nucleocapsid around it, along with which it is having a lipid bilayer envelope with various surface glycoproteins, right? So this is the structure of herpes simplex virus. Will not be going much in the detail about it. Now the target tissues or the organs which are affected by herpes simplex virus in this herpes simplex disease will be firstly the oral mucous membrane, then it will be the skin, then next you have central nervous system, and lastly you have eye. So these are the most common sites where herpes virus is going to target, and these tissues are known as herpes virus hominis, right? So the tissues which are affected by this virus are known as herpes virus hominis. Next, now this herpes simplex virus infection, it can be of two types, like two types of virus are there, that is herpes simplex 1 and herpes simplex 2. So herpes simplex type 1 usually located from lesions in and around the mouth. So around your oral cavity or mouth, it is mainly transmitted by direct contact or droplet spread from cases or carriers. Those who have already overcome with this infection, they are known as carriers, and the new cases which are already affected, from there you have the droplet infection. Agar aapko hota hai, then it is from HSV1 which will mainly affect around the mouth. Second is HSV2 which is going to involve majority of genital organs, right? So it is also known as genital herpes infections, and it is transmitted venerally mainly through sexual contact, right? If a parent is having, then there are also chances that the offspring or the children are also going to get affected by this HSV2. So as a general rule, you can just consider that HSV1 produces above the waist. Whatever the infection are caused above the waist are caused due to HSV1, and whatever the below the waist infection are caused by HSV2. So these are the two main forms of herpes simplex virus. Now next, as I discuss modes of transmission, so firstly you are having a direct contact with the herpes simplex virus. Secondly, skin to skin contact, like if the person is affected and you're having direct skin contact, then if the person is immunocompromised, right, the immunity is not such that it is able to fight against those virus. Next, unprotected sex, that is HSV type 2, and stress related or allergic conditions are also considered as modes of transmission, right? So now discussing about the pathogenesis of herpes simplex virus. So firstly, as I discussed, if you are having a direct contact, then the entry is going to be by skin or mucous membrane. कहाँ से enter होगा? Skin और mucous membrane में से enter होगा. Thereby the virus is going to multiply into various number of virions, right? So then virus multiply करके, there are two chances. First, it is going to enter the sensory nerve index and reach to the root ganglia. There are ganglia which are going to be affected if HSV1 is involved. On the left side of your screen, you can see HSV1. Then it is mainly going to affect the trigeminal ganglia. HSV1 किसको affect करेगा? Trigeminal ganglia को. और HSV2 जो है, it is mainly going to affect the lumbosacral ganglia. So virus has entered the skin or mucous membrane, it has multiplied, it has reached to its respective ganglia, then it will stay in its latency mode. That means it is going to rest there in its dormant phase, and whenever there are trigger factors which are going to activate these viruses, then again it is going to get reactivated and show its clinical features, and the direct route is virus multiplies. There is the lysis of cells around the area which it has targeted, which will lead to formation of fluid filled vesicles which will then rupture and formed as ulcers, right? So this is the basic pathology. You need to understand two different things. Skin or mucous membrane में से आएगा, multiply करेगा, या तो it will go into the sensory nerves, or then moving on to the root ganglia and stay in its latency phase and then get aggravated, or directly it will cause lysis of cells forming vesicles and in future ulcers, right? So, and for HSV1 you have trigeminal ganglia, HSV2 you have lumbosacral ganglia, right? Next, moving on to the first form, that is the primary herpetic stomatitis, the oral form. So it is mainly seen in children's and young adults. The primary herpetic stomatitis is mainly seen in small children's and young adults. Whenever the infection is seen in small children's, it is considered as a primary attack because the immunity of the children is not such that it is able to fight against it. So initially the infection is going to start as fever, irritability or headache, pain on swallowing, regional lymphadenopathy, that is enlargement of regional lymph nodes. So initially in 3 to 4 days or in a week, the child is going to face with these symptoms like fever, irritability, headache, pain on swallowing and regional lymphadenopathy. So after which again the symptoms like erythematous and edematous gingiva, right? So the gingiva is going to appear swollen and red in color. Along with the gingiva, the lips, buccal mucosa, tongue, pharynx can also get involved, right? So these are the most major prone sites. Along with that, the child is also going to have a painful mouth. So eventually after this, you can see that before the formation of vesicles, that is the fluid filled vesicles which are going to form within 5 to 6 days, it will be preceded by erythematous gingiva and painful mouth. So right, there is not directly formation of vesicles, there is consequent events which are leading to formation of vesicles which will then rupture and form into an ulcer, right? This ulcer will appear as erythematous red or brownish in color. Whichever area the vesicle is formed, it will get burst or it will break and form into an ulcer. Eventually this ulcer is going to heal into 7 to 14 days, leaving no scar at the site of involvement. So kya hua? There was a primary attack in children's, or if it is in children, it is known as primary attack, but if it is affecting the younger adults, then it will start as fever, irritability or headache, along with pain on swallowing and regional lymphadenopathy, moving on to erythematous and edematous or swollen gingiva, and lastly painful mouth. These areas like lips, buccal mucosa, floor of the mouth or tongue can also get affected, right? Next, vesicles will be formed which will have yellowish color fluid filled in them, which are again are going to get burst and lead to the formation of ulcer, which is going to heal in 7 to 14 days, leaving no scar. The incubation period will be 2 to 20 days. So whenever a patient or a person is exposed, the time of action will be between 2 to 20 days, on an average 6 days. Now, what are the mode of transmission? Again, the modes of transmission remain the same. That is infection caused by airborne transmission, that is droplet infection, or direct contact due to contaminated water, or infection caused by pathogens directly into the bloodstream. So this is about primary herpetic stomatitis. So now what are the histological features of primary herpetic stomatitis? It is an intraepithelial fluid filled blister. So whenever you take a sample of the lesion, you will see intraepithelial, the action or the inflammatory reaction is going to be inside the epithelium. So it is expressed as intraepithelial fluid filled blisters, and now these cells are going to get swollen and have a pale eosinophilic cytoplasm. On the left side of your skin, you can see that the cells are swollen, which are having pale eosinophilic cytoplasm and large vesicular nuclei. So now this phenomena is known as ballooning degeneration. there is degeneration of cells. Along with that, the cells are getting swollen due to pale eosinophilic cytoplasm. So in total, it is known as ballooning degeneration. Along with that, you will see some inclusion bodies that are, these are eosinophilic ovoid homogeneous. On the second image, you can see ovoid eosinophilic homogeneous structure within the nucleus. This is the zoomed in image, that the second image which I have shown. In that you can see a eosinophilic ovoid mass in the nucleus which tends to displace the nuclear chromatin periphery. So these are the intranuclear inclusion bodies present in the nucleus. Any body present in the nucleus, they are considered as intranuclear inclusion bodies, and they are termed as Lipschutz bodies. What are they termed as? Lipschutz bodies, right? So first thing which we saw was ballooning degeneration, which was due to pale eosinophilic cytoplasm and large vesicular nuclei. Secondly, we have intranuclear inclusion bodies which are known as Lipschutz bodies, and these are eosinophilic ovoid homogeneous structures within the nucleus. Next, the cytoplasm of the infected cell produces giant cells. You will see n number of inflammatory cells and also giant cells, and these giant cells have also one term that is known as Rank cells. So which are the three main findings we found in the histological features? First was the ballooning degeneration, second is the Lipschutz bodies, and third is the giant cells which are known as Zank cells, T-Z-A-N-K, Zank cells, right? Next, moving on to the diagnosis. So whenever as I said, if you do a scraping of the skin lesion and you do a sample or a diagnosis or culture of that, and you stain that sample, that is through Wright stain, Giemsa stain or Pap stain, then what will you find is that are your histological features, that is ballooning degeneration, Lipschutz bodies, giant cells or Zank cells, and inflammatory cells will be seen. So this is the first thing. Secondly, you can also do the tissue culture of the specimen. So whenever you do tissue culture, you can see in two fields, that is the bright field and fluorescence field. And there is also one more method for the diagnosis of herpes simplex, that is the polymerase chain reaction method. So the test kits are available for both HSV1 and HSV2. So this was based on the diagnosis. Next, moving on to the treatment. So as it is a viral infection, you will surely go for antiviral therapeutic drugs, right? So you will give antiviral therapy. Maybe it may be acyclovir or vibaridin. Antibiotics for secondary infection, if there is any secondary infection involvement. NSAIDs and topical anesthetics also may be provided for relief from the discomfort which is caused due to slight pain and burning sensation, right? So these are going to be the treatment considerations. Now next, secondary or recurrent herpetic stomatitis. Now what does this mean, secondary or recurrent? Till now you saw that primary herpetic stomatitis was a primary attack. The person was not attacked before in his life and it was his first attack, so he couldn't face the virus and symptoms were developed. Now the person is already having immunity, right? And the virus is staying in the ganglia in its dormant phase also after healing is completed. Now in future, if this virus again gets activated due to some trigger, then it is termed as secondary or recurrent herpetic stomatitis. Why it is termed as secondary? Because the persons who are not immunized to this, those who are not having antibodies to HSV1, are at higher risk of getting this secondary herpetic स्टोमेटाइटिस. तो इसमें दो ग्रुप हो गए, जो पहले से एक्सपोज नहीं है वो भी, और जो पहले एक्सपोज हो चुके उनका रिकरेंस होने के कारण भी हो सकता है. नेक्स्ट, स्टार्टिंग विद द इंट्रोडक्शन. सो इट इज यूजुअली रिप्रेजेंटेड एज attenuated form of the primary herpetic stomatitis, right? जो भी primary herpetic stomatitis था उसका एक attenuated मतलब reactivated form कह सकते हैं. It is mainly seen in adults, that was seen in children's. Now next, moving on to the recurrence, it is mainly related in three different theories. That what is the reason behind the recurrence of herpes simplex stomatitis, right? So it may be due to ganglionic trigger theory. So due to any injury to the nerve part or the ganglionic part, and the ganglion is triggered and which may lead to reactivation of HSV virus. Skin trigger theory, that is exposure to HSV virus directly through skin contact. emotional theory due to stress. So these are the three main theories. Now assume that the virus has entered the body. Now virus is staying in its dormant phase since long time in the regional ganglia. It may be the trigeminal or lumbosacral ganglia for HSV2. So now whenever the reactivation is triggered, the spread is going to occur along the nerve to the site on the oral mucosa and skin. क्या होगा? Whichever ganglia is associated in that region, the spread of infection will occur, and if the person was previously affected, then there are chances that the lesion may develop on the same site. For example, if the patient of HSV1 is again targeted by this infection due to reactivation, then there are chances that this lesion is going to occur on the same site. Next, here the viruses destroy the epithelial cells. It is same which was happening in HSV1 and induce the inflammatory response with characteristics lesion of recurrent infection. Now, what is the difference between HSV1 and HSV2? That is the characteristics signs. That is, first will be stress, then you will have menstruation, pregnancy, upper respiratory tract infections, GI disturbance, and allergy to some drug or some food product, right? So these are the signs of HSV2 which you will not see in HSV1. Next, the infection may occur at widely varying intervals. It is not necessary that there is a regular interval of time after which this HSV2 will be again reactivated. For some patient, it is seen that it is activated in months, some it is seen in years, and some for longer period of time it is not reactivated. The lesion may usually develop at the site of primary inoculation. As I said in the previous slide, that the lesion may occur at the site it was previously affected, right? Or if the patient is newly affected, then there are chances that it may occur on different site. So primary inoculation ki site pe there are chances of infection or in any adjacent area to that ganglion. So if trigeminal ganglion affected, then in that region, and if lumbosacral is affected, then in lower region. So HSV2 in lumbosacral below the waist, trigeminal above the waist in the face region, right? The lips and the oral cavity are the most common affected sites. These we are seeing from the initial site, that lips and the oral cavity. Then you have lesions are usually preceded by burning and tingling sensation. In that also we saw erythematous and edematous gingiva. In this also you have burning and tingling sensations. Along with this, there is feeling of tautness or swelling or slight soreness in the oral cavity, and then in future there will be formation of vesicles around the lips or inside the oral cavity in small minute clusters. There are three images in the slide. The first one shows cluster of small fluid filled vesicles, right? In future what will happen, these cluster are going to unite, then they'll burst and get converted into an ulcer which will be erythematous or slight brownish in color. This ulcer is going to again heal within 7 to 10 days of time, leaving the scar, right? Next, histological feature and diagnosis. Sorry, there will be no scar formation. Next, histological features and diagnosis. So the histological features are usually similar to that of primary form of disease. You saw ballooning degeneration, you saw Zank cells, right? Then you saw Lipschutz bodies, and along with that inflammatory cells also were present. So the histological feature and the diagnostic criteria is going to remain the same. Only thing is that these patients are going to be the reactivated form. Don't confuse secondary or recurrent herpetic stomatitis with HSV2. HSV2 is going to affect only the lower part of the waist, that is mainly the genitals. This is related to HSV1. Next, treatment of this secondary herpetic stomatitis is antiviral chemotherapeutic agents. As I said in the previous slides also, that acyclovir or vidarabine can be used, the doses of which may vary according to the clinical situation. So the clinician must decide it accordingly. It may vary according to clinical situations. Differential diagnosis, that the clinical features of this disease might clash with some other diseases like recurrent access stomatitis, herpes zoster, erythema multiforme, smallpox, pemphigus, epidermolysis bullosa, food and drug allergies, and lastly chemical burns. So mnemonic to remember the differential diagnosis is same: herpes FC. H stands for herpes zoster, E stands for erythema multiforme, R stands for recurrent abscess stomatitis, P for pemphigus, E for epidermolysis bullosa, S for smallpox, F for food and drug allergies, and lastly C for chemical burn. So this was about primary and secondary herpetic stomatitis. Primary starts with child's primary attack or young adults, right? Then eventually the virus is going to stay in the body in dormant phase, which will again get activated in the secondary herpetic stomatitis or recurrent herpetic stomatitis. But in secondary you have the new cases which are not affected in their past, right? So that are also at higher risk. Now next, moving on to herpes simplex virus 2. So herpes simplex virus 2, as I said before also, it is mainly going to affect the genitals. So this is type is usually affect the male and female genital organs, on which there will be vesicle formation. The vesicle is going to burst and lead to formation of ulcer. Usually the virus is transmitted through unprotected sexual context. So we are not going to go much in the detail of general herpes simplex virus 2, right? This much is enough. You need to mainly concentrate on the oral manifestations and histological part. I hope this topic was clear. If you guys have any doubt regarding herpes simplex virus, please let me know in the comment section. And this is a new way of teaching or conveying my knowledge to you is through slides. Before I used to teach on board, but this I feel this is more convenient, and I can include more digital information to explain you guys the topic very thoroughly. So I also need your feedback that how do you like this new way of teaching. At last, if you feel our content is good, then please like and share, and don't forget to subscribe, because you will be the first one notified when we upload the video. Thank you.